So Sherrone Moore gets his man at offensive coordinator. That is Kirk Campbell. We'll get to that coming up. There you see him on the screen. If you're watching, Jerry Diorio, the former Wolverine. Say hi to him, everybody. He's ready
Great
to go.
Great to be a Michigan Wolverine and a Detroit Lion, Denny. Great year for football in Michigan.
You know, you're right. It's been a good point. You know, it's been a really good year for both. We're going to talk about it. It's just been put together an advisory committee with the Big Ten and SEC. Let's see what Jerry, if he was on that committee, let's see some of the things that he would put out there first and foremost in an advisory committee. I know that colleges, the only thing they like better than committees are subcommittees, and now they've got one that is being formed, and we'll see what that's going to be all about. Jerry mentioned the Lions, and I know it was his last Sunday, but we'll just get Jerry's thoughts on what happened on Sunday and how things look moving forward with the Detroit Lions. But we will start with this big news, and that is Sherrone Moore, the new Michigan coach. He's made a few different moves with Grant Newsome as his offensive line coach and Kirk Campbell as the offensive coordinator. He takes over for Sherrone Moore, who goes to head coach. And Campbell, Jerry, goes from, he was at Old Dominion for 2 years where he called plays. So he's had some experience with the headset on. And then he came in as an analyst. And then last year, he was elevated to quarterbacks coach and now offensive coordinator. So this is a shooting star. And, one thing with Sherrone Moore has been here the whole time that Campbell has been. So these guys not only have their paths crossed, they've been sitting in the same meeting room. So, Moore would have a pretty good idea of what kind of football mind that he has there in Campbell. So he taps him as his first OC. What are your thoughts on the move?
I was listening to you and Scar the other day, as usual, and I think you all hit the nail right on the head. I love the fact that we are promoting from within, not just the OC, but the strength and conditioning position. I have a feeling that Clinkscale is going to probably be the next hire or next official coordinator announced by Michigan. And I think he would be a phenomenal DC. So I love the fact that Sherrone Moore is promoting from within. He knows what he's bringing in. He knows their mindset. He knows their direction. They know him. They know what he wants to do. So with that said, I love the fact that we're promoting from within. I think that happened from the Bo transition to Moeller to Carr. And when it didn't happen that way, I think we got into some trouble. So I like the fact that we're promoting from within. I think we have quality people because of the people that trained them initially. So I'm feeling very good about not just the OC, but some of the other positions that are being filled.
Yeah, the thing I like about it here is that Moore has worked closely with him. This is not someone that he is unfamiliar with or is going on some sort of resume. He will know Kirk Campbell better than anyone. As working with him, he was the offensive coordinator with a quarterback coach, and then he was an analyst, and he's been there for the whole time. So, he is going to know, more. Sherrone Moore is going to know more about Campbell than anyone out there. How about Ferris with the question, Jerry? And it goes right to you. The offense going to open up then? That's a question mark. And then the other question is a high chance of a transfer quarterback coming in. How about those two questions for you?
Well, first of all, I was looking over the transfer portal. Nice little site here that I found, and it lists all the different people in the transfer portal. To be honest with you, I don't see the great quarterback in the transfer portal that makes me want to salivate and go after him and load up on him. The kid from East Carolina, I think it is, or Coastal Carolina, is out there. We missed the kid from Toledo who is going to Baylor, I understand. So those were some quality transfer quarterbacks. I don't know if I see the quality transfer quarterback in the portal right now. And if somebody's got a suggestion, go ahead, which then tells me our quarterback might be on the roster right now. That's what I'm thinking. As far
go ahead.
As far as opening up our offense, here we have Sherrone Moore, tight ends coach, offensive line coach, offensive coordinator, interim head coach, and I didn't see much opening up there. I saw us continue to run the ball, a huge focus on running the ball, on controlling the tempo of the game, and also playing to our strength and their weakness. And so as far as opening up the game and opening up our playbook a little bit more, I think what we're going to see is more of the same, what we've seen this year and in the past couple of years, our offense taking advantage of what the defense is going to give us. And I believe we have the personnel to do that. Our offensive line, I think our offensive line is going to be very good next year. I think our offensive line is going to be very good. I think our running game could be very good with Edwards and Mullins. I think we definitely need a tight end or two to go with Loveland. And if we can get that, I think we're going to be in pretty decent shape. You got Samaj Morgan, you got Morse at the wide receivers. If we can add one more or two more there, I think we're in pretty good shape. The big thing is solidifying our personnel on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, I thought the biggest
transfers.
I thought the biggest indicator on what kind of offense Michigan is going to run came from Sherrone Moore in his introductory press conference when he said, "Don't worry, we're going to continue to smash." And that's his thing. When I think smash, I don't think about, well, Michigan's going to throw the ball around more. I also think about who he learned from in Jim Harbaugh and Harbaugh's philosophy. And then I also think about Sherrone Moore being like yourself, Jerry, a former offensive line coach, and liking the physicality up front and knowing that has been the biggest reason that Michigan has had success over the last 3 years. So why would they change? And I'm right with you on that. I think they will continue to run the football. And next year, however it was going to play out, Michigan's going to play to their defense. And they've got their most talented players, as a position group is going to be, hopefully it's going to be the offensive line, but certainly you've got Donovan Edwards and then, Colston Loveland. So you mix that in there. I do think when it comes to quarterback, I know in the pros, this is how the good teams do it. And I know what Jim Harbaugh did. Jim Harbaugh had JJ freaking McCarthy, and he still brought in Jack Tuttle and Davis Warren and Alex Orji and, Jaden Denegal. And now they have Jaden Davis. The point there is that he just threw, and this is what GMs that have had some success in the NFL, they throw everything, every resource they can at the quarterback position. Because if you get that right, you're off and running. And I just look, Harbaugh last year when Michigan lost Jake Moody, everybody's, myself included, like, man, that is going to be the toughest player to replace on the team. Well, not only did he go to the transfer portal and get James Turner, not only did he recruit Adam Samaha, the kid locally, he also went to a Mississippi State transfer, the Hollenbach. So, they had 3 place kickers. You can't have enough quarterbacks. And how Michigan changed their schedule of their spring game, normally, in early April, whatever it is, they pushed it back a month. Usually, Michigan's before all of the other teams. Now they're like back there. Maybe they'll have a few other programs in schools that will have gone through spring, and their quarterbacks will realize, like, I'm the odd man out here. I think they'll be scouting. Of course, they'll be scouting all of the springs from all of the teams across the country. And my guess is that they would bring somebody in and saying, hey, we've got a wide open position here. You want to come in and compete? Now, look, that's nothing against Tuttle. We're still out there. We don't know if he's going to be able to get granted a waiver to play. It's nothing against Davis Warren or either of the two junior quarterbacks in Orji and Denegal or the true freshman. I mean, you got to come in and compete, and it's the most important position, and it's wide open. And I think Michigan will be out there, and they'll be looking for one of those guys.
Again, Denny, what I'm saying is right now, when I'm looking at the transfer portal, I don't know if there's anything to bank on right now that's going to be, now you're right. Come spring, later in the summer, there might be something pop up and somebody might not be real happy with their position where they're at now. So, that could definitely happen. I'm just talking about right now. If you see somebody out there, let me know who it is, because I'm not seeing other than the kid from, I think it's Coastal Carolina, Milroe might also be available. We don't know. I mean, that's Devin Brown. I'm not sure he would be an answer.
Yeah, who knows? I mean, I think there'll be some guys that are coming free, I should say. Michael's talking about Bill O'Brien possibly going from Ohio State to Boston College, and then Michael's speculating that Michael Hart could take the open OC job in Columbus after being snubbed in Ann Arbor. Do you look at it as a snub to Michigan Mike Hart, who of course is a favorite with Michigan fans?
Yeah, well, did Mike Hart feel snubbed that he didn't get the head coaching job, or did Mike Hart feel snubbed that he didn't get the OC job? Those that's the question. I mean, is Mike Hart so? Is he so adamant that he should have been the head coach that he would be doing the kinds of things that he's been doing lately? I don't know. I think we made the right decision in Sherrone Moore. I think he proved himself. And as far as Mike Hart's hurt feelings, I mean, you got to do what you got to do. He's a very good running back coach, but he's never been anywhere else. Never been on, from what I understand, never been at any other position. So, I mean, it's kind of hard to be an offensive coordinator when you haven't been around those other positions wholeheartedly and coaching those other positions. So, I know he's a favorite with the running backs, and it does kind of scare me with Donovan Edwards. I'm sure he had a very good relationship with Donovan Edwards. Him going to Ohio State, well, good luck.
Yeah, I think that's I haven't seen that. I think Michael's just making that part up, but you'd like to be able to promote everybody and get everybody jobs and all the form, and all of that. That's the tough part. And, from Mike Hart, sometimes you have to go to a group of 5 to be an offensive coordinator or even a head coach. And sometimes maybe there's some pride that needs to be it depends. I mean, there's different routes. It's not all like, okay, this is exactly how to be an offensive coordinator or a head coach. I do think he desires to be a head coach. Most coaches do, at some point, want to keep going up there to get your shot, but there's different ways to go about it. And then there's other things that are off the field that we don't exactly know about everything that's going on. It might not be as exactly as you're seeing it. And then, you can say, well, what are you talking about? Well, there's a lot of other things. I mean, it's not exactly laid out there like, okay, we're just looking at the resume. These are people, there are families, there's situations, there's all kinds
of
so
a lot of ego. That's all playing into it. That all
personal reasons, personal issues. I mean, there's all kinds of. I'm not suggesting anything. I'm just putting it out there.
Right.
That like when it is this kind of situation that it doesn't it does seem to be, not like everything meeting the eye, at least out in public. And then there was, Hart taking some things off of his social media, which maybe he did last year. I don't know. To me, that spells that there's something else that potentially could be there. And if anybody would get mad at me for saying it, I'm saying that's why I am saying it. So,
well, Denny, there have been stories out there about Michael Hart and having problems with having differences with Harbaugh, and so you're right. We don't know what's behind Michael Hart and what he's thinking and where he's at right now.
Well, we know he had issues when he was a player, and Harbaugh was at Stanford, and Harbaugh made the I guess it was an accusation that, or that you could take easy classes like at Michigan or something when he was at Stanford. And, Hart came back and, told him to watch his mouth. I'm paraphrasing. He didn't tell him to watch his mouth, but, essentially did that. Antoine is talking about Antoine King is saying, hopefully our quarterback isn't on the roster. If he is, we're screwed. What I would say to that is not necessarily. I mean, you have not seen
no way
just because they're not 5 stars or for whatever they are. You haven't seen them out there. So we just don't know about that. I see what you're saying. And that's, I think that they could throw more resources at it via the transfer portal, but that's not a sure thing that they would be screwed. Here's somebody talking about a BC quarterback. Yeah, there are guys that are going to free up for coaching movement from spring, getting passed up, all of that kind of stuff. So Shadyville asking if you think the offense could look like the Ravens offense. Not that Orgy is Lamar Jackson by any means, but we do know Orgy can run the football. Like, we have seen him enough, whether it's in the spring or in actual games, that he can move. And no, he's not like even little Lamar Jackson, but that's a decent question. I think, Jerry, what about it?
I'm going to be real interested in seeing what happens in the spring game or in the spring practice, because I have what I've seen in those quarterbacks. I saw firsthand, up close and personal. I saw them in the games. I like a couple of our quarterbacks who are out on the roster right now. I think there's some real talent in some of those quarterbacks. And to say we're screwed because our quarterback is on the roster, I think that's a stretch. Because let's face it, JJ did a great job managing our offense with a phenomenal defense. That's where I'm at right now. In that last 6-game stretch, our defense won the national title. And so what I'm saying, JJ was a great quarterback, had some great mechanics, had some phenomenal throws. Skills were phenomenal at times in the beginning of the season. But at the end of the season, when everything mattered, it was the defense that showed up and our quarterback managed the game. And many would say that about great quarterbacks throughout the NFL too. So I like what I've seen in our quarterback stable so far. If there's somebody that pops up and really wows me, great, let's go after him. But I don't think that's going to happen until spring ball and maybe after spring ball. I like to see the competition with what we have right now. These are the guys that have been coached by Sherrone Moore, been coached by our OC. Let's see where this plays out. Let's see who steps up, because I got a feeling Jaden Denegal is going to impress some people.
Southwest line, I don't know if it's Southwest. That was my SW Lion 26 on the feedback is saying Hart working with the running backs, Campbell work with the quarterbacks. Shouldn't be a surprise. I don't know if that's true, but it is something we look at. Like, running backs they get pigeonholed, and they also they get their short end of the stick in the NFL when it comes to the contracts. We all love running backs, but if it's not Michigan, it is Michigan right now we are talking about. So you have to put that into play. But almost everywhere else, you'd be like, running backs. It's about quarterbacks and throwing the football. But, you look at the Michigan running backs with Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards and the, what Mike Hart, has had with his position group. There's a part about that. But there is the thing about, well, you do get pigeonholed. And, Jerry, we all do for whatever we done or whatever we have done or whatever, you're a former offensive line coach. So if you were going to Michigan, as an analyst, I would think it would have been as an offensive line coach. But then if you got involved, with any kind of play calling, everybody would say, oh, Diorio just wants to run the football. And I don't know if that's true or not, that you just want to run the football.
Well, Denny, Jim Harbaugh was a quarterback. With that thought process, theoretically, we're thinking we're a run team. So how come Jim Harbaugh is such a ground and pound guy?
Good point.
Okay. So, I mean, just because you're a quarterback's coach doesn't mean you're going to just air it out. A quarterback's best friend is a strong running game, because with a strong running game, that means my play action passing game is wide open. And so naturally, quarterbacks tend to like the run game to set up their pass game.
And the answer to your question is Bo gave the old famous line. I think, that 3 things can happen or 4 things can happen when you throw the football, and 3 of them are bad. We know that he loved to run the football. And Mike Ditka, where Harbaugh was drafted, and what was he there for 6, or more years? Ditka was all about running the football. So those guys, you're a product, sure, of your own, players that you play with the coaches, that you're around. I would think that's why what forged Harbaugh's identity. I just saw that, we'll see if it's true or not, but there was an idea that Harbaugh, one of his first moves is he wants Saquon Barkley as a free agent from the Giants because he wants to run the football. Now, look, that made sense to me. Like, I saw it. I'm like, Harbaugh wants Saquon Barkley. Oh, yeah, I can see that.
When he's already got one of the best scoring running backs in the NFL.
I don't know. Eckler's a little bit like, they didn't treat him right. Yeah, they didn't treat him right. I think he's on the way out. So,
but a little bit injury prone. And hey, I would want Barkley too if I was Harbaugh. He's seen him enough.
Yeah, there's the part. It's not just about the position that you coach and what kind of coach you are, although that's a huge part of it. But recruiting and all there's as a college coach, I don't know what the percentages are, but I do know this, and I'm not saying anything against Mike Hart as a recruiter, but what I would say about Campbell is there are always glowing things written and said about Kirk Campbell so far as a recruiter.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's not a knock on Hart, and more of just a compliment to Campbell, is that that part of the equation, he is all about that. So I know that could play into it. But I'll go back to what I said. Hart's been here for a couple minutes as well, and Sherrone Moore has been in the room with these guys, and he has seen them. And I don't know if they all go up to the whiteboard and start, talking about or rearranging the office chairs about what they're going to do, or hitting each other up with text about what they want to do. But, Campbell clearly impressed Sherrone Moore, because I would think Hart would have the lead because he is the ultimate Michigan man. It was the Michigan great here, and all the fans adore him. So you're going to have to do a lot, to impress a new head coach if you're going to have the pass up Mike Hart, if that's
you hit the nail on the head, Denny. You hit the nail on the head. Sherrone Moore has seen these guys in action, and he knows what he's comfortable with. For whatever reason, he chose to make the decisions he's made because of what he's seen inside that coaching room. And you know what? As far as I'm concerned, this young man, Campbell, Jimmy loved him. I think he's right for the position.
All right. You and I are in agreement, and I would say that almost every person that has used the feedback is saying what Moose 15-0 is saying. Campbell was the right choice. Yep. All right, Jerry, now it's a can of worms time, and I don't know, so I'll just read you what is going to happen moving forward in college football. The Big Ten Conference and the SEC Conference, they are putting together an advisory committee. All right, so when I see that, and I know what it's about, football. I mean, so you and I can agree on that, right? That's what we're talking about. Football is the one that makes all the money. So this is about football. They're
especially when you're talking about the SEC and the Big Ten. So,
yeah,
okay,
the
yes.
two power conferences. I know they're originally was five. They call it a Power Five, but the Pac-10 is dissolved, right? Like so, there's what's it a Power Four now? Everybody wants out of the ACC. At least Florida State does, and
Who else was I looking at? I think Clemson wants out of the ACC.
sure, you're right because they don't get the amount of money and they're locked in for another like 10 years or something. So they're in a battle. The Big 12 is the Big 12. I don't know if I could name all the members of the Big 12 right now. If you gave me $100,
I think the elite school in the Big 12 right now is either Kansas or Kansas State. And if I'm mistaken, please tell me I'm mistaken. But Colorado and Utah might be the Big 12 elite.
Well, they got two Big 12 alums starting in the Super Bowl, so they have that going for them. But that's not what I'm talking about. So we're sitting down, Jerry. You're a member of this advisory committee, and you have Greg Sankey. He's the commissioner, right, of the SEC, and then the anti-Michigan commissioner Tony Batiti is up there as well. So I imagine these guys are sitting up at the head of the table, and they throw it out questions to get this ball rolling. And, they point to Jerry. Jerry, what are you saying to him?
We need to cut ties with the NCAA completely. We're not an amateur sport, never have been, never will be. And we need to implement a commissioner to oversee things and get some boundaries and standards for revenue sharing. The NIL is going to be very difficult to police. I don't see how you police the NIL, to be honest with you. That is advertising.
I'm going to have to remind you. I'm going to be Greg Sankey. Jerry, I just wanted you to give me one thing. No, I'm just kidding. So there's two. Those are the two pretty big ones. I want you to go back to that, Sam, listing all those Big 12 schools. I don't think that I would have gotten BYU. I do remember Cincinnati getting in there. The Colorado now is going to be in the Big 12. Maybe I would have missed Houston too. Well, I don't know. I would have not got $100. UFC, I bet on them this year, and I knew that they were in there, so I would not have got that $100 for a cut. So no big deal, Sankey, according to Jerry, separate from the NCAA and get some guardrails for name, image, and likeness. That's what
guardrails for revenue sharing.
Revenue
sharing. Image, and likeness. I don't see how you police it. I really don't see how you're going to police name, image, and likeness. That is advertising dollars. That can of worms is open. That's open now. It's now going to come down to revenue sharing with the with TV contracts, and that's where you could police some of this stuff.
Well, if I could, Sankey would say, so Jerry, you're assuming that these antitrust court cases against the NCAA and NIL, that, the cat's out of the bag here, that the deal with the players and promising them money up front, the Attorney General in Tennessee and Virginia have both said yes, they should be allowed to discuss NIL deals. That's the antitrust issue that they're fighting right now. So that would be big news for Michigan, because it appears that Michigan is not promising money in NIL, and that puts them in a predicament when it comes to recruiting, because the very top players, of course, they've earned their position and they want money. Everyone in all of sports almost always goes for the biggest deal, and they almost all want the guaranteed and upfront money. So that would be big news for a school like Michigan if they're able to, figure that piece out.
Denny, the NCAA is embattled right now with two extremely important, extremely huge lawsuits. We've talked about the $4 billion revenue sharing lawsuit that, from what I'm understanding, is coming from some of the lawyers out of Michigan. Not that they're from University of Michigan or anything like that, but that have had some ties with Michigan, and they're even quoting Harbaugh in some of their introduction. The other one is this Tennessee case, And this one is very intriguing because not only do you have the University of Tennessee out front and standing solid with their football program, you've got Marsha Blackburn, a senator from Tennessee, out there raising Cain about the NCAA and the NIL against Tennessee. The NCAA is in serious trouble. I've been saying it for a while. And I think they've got their hands full, and they want to, it's the old North Dallas 40 analogy. You want to call it a business, I call it a game. I call it a business, you call it a game, and that's the chasing of the tail all the time. And I just don't see the NCAA as a viable commission anymore, or a viable entity, and I think we need to relook at the entire standards and boundaries of what we can and cannot do for our players.
Yeah, we know that they tried to ding Michigan, and they did, suspending Harbaugh in real time. But these NIL things that they're going back, some people are saying, look, they're getting, they're going after these teams. Well, the FSU collective, where the coach, drove the player over to, get the money, that was 2 years ago.
I forgot about that one too. Yeah, that's right.
The Rashada deal with Florida, where they, I guess, offered him, promised him $12 million, and then it fell apart and he went to Arizona. That was 2 years ago. And the Tennessee pact with Ilalilava, their quarterback, Tennessee is they're the stupidest program out there, because they were bragging about, spending the money to get to their quarterback. Yeah, we're spending money hand over fist to get QBs, and okay, well, now you already have a backload of cases on you, and now here's a fresh one for you. But those were 2 years ago. So bungled deals and in bragging about them, they've got to do something where you can't be retroactive from 2 years ago. The quarterbacks are still on the team and all of this. So that's where when my hand would go up, I'm going to say, well, you got to do something where you can't be going 2 years prior to be looking at things. But then, as we saw with Michigan, when you had a bylaw that Michigan went around, and then you're getting a commissioner interpreting it and having other schools like, yeah, that wasn't very good. Well, what are we talking about here? So they need to work about the paying of the players. That needs to be involved. And I know they want to protect all the money because they get to keep it all right now, but they need to figure out that part of it too. I know you said that the cat's out of the bag and everything else, but I do think that we've identified the three biggest things, though. Your two things right off the bat, which were getting rid of the NCAA, right?
Right. And one other thing I think needs to be addressed, and I'm not saying anything about holding players back from the transfer portal, but there should be some minimum in the transfer portal. In other words, Ewers going to Ohio State, getting $1 million and transferring the next year, I don't think is right in any way, shape, or form. I don't see how that's beneficial to college football and college sports. So I think there should be, just like the pros, some kind of minimum where you are committing to some kind of minimum and then go from there. So those are my things.
Yeah. And I'd say, we're all, I don't know if we're all selfish, but we're all thinking about, so the Big Ten and SEC, they're thinking about, because they're the big dogs, how to keep all the money and how to keep this thing going. And then each individual school is thinking about, hey, this is our spot. And with that, with Michigan, they're bringing in USC, UCLA, Oregon, and Washington. 3 out of those 4 teams right now, I would say, should all be under investigation. USC, when they had Jordan Addison at Pitt, and he was already going there 2 weeks before the transfer portal was open or there was any announcement, and then they got him, and then he was complaining about the money that he got there. I mean, if there's why isn't there an investigation with USC, both with Oregon and UCLA, with Dante Moore, the money that he was getting from back and forth there? Oregon, you could probably come up with another half dozen things. So what team isn't going to be under investigation? I was under investigation, all of they need to figure that part out. Michigan fans might be like, okay, now it's your time to be under investigation. But there's a lot of that. Like, I'm sure Greg Sankey's looking at it. Yeah, Tennessee's out there, and the Florida. Two of their schools right now, and they know another half dozen. Greg Sankey knows. That's when he told both Jimbo and Nick Saban last year, when everybody loved those guys talking about, yeah, you guys are paying all the players, and then Jimbo came back and said, no, you are. I could tell. And then Greg Sankey was like, look,
let's not open the door to our room. Is that what you're talking about, Denny?
Kill the golden goose here.
What the heck are you doing to us?
Well, the Big Ten,
we're cannibalizing ourselves here.
Yeah, and then I would like to ask Tony Battiti if the share of money that Michigan got for making the national championship, did everybody cash their checks?
Yeah, no,
because they all wanted Michigan out.
Yeah, exactly. Why shouldn't we get all that money? I mean, you guys suspended our coach. That should be the payoff right there. But Denny, how many times did we hear people talking and bragging about, while Michigan was still playing for a national title, about going after Dante Moore and some of the offers before it was open? Before the portal was even open, he had offers and had all these contacts. So that's my point. The NCAA has no control over it anyways. They don't have any control over it. All they keep doing is, we're going to investigate this and this and that. You ain't got enough people to investigate all that. And in the meantime, Jim Harbaugh is our number one guy we're going after. Get rid of him.
Get rid of the NCAA. That's it. I am with you there. All right. Yeah. I mean, we could sit there. The people talking about Ohio State. Yeah. I mean, Ohio State, the recruits and the big, I mean, they have hit such the jackpot this offseason. I mean, when you're looking at that, let's be honest. And look, it's a Michigan pot, so everybody's like, oh, they're so dirty, and we know. But look at them. How else are they getting all these guys? Are they just being like, oh, we're Ohio State? Plus, Ryan Day was the one that, was out there talking about we need $13 million and everything else. So, yeah, they're so mad for the last 3 years that they look like they've bought the best team that money can buy out there. We'll see.
Kind of like Texas A&M.
Texas A&M, right? So maybe they'll be the next Texas A&M, which means that they'll go down in flames. Be nice. There you go. Ferris has started out the chat, and he's come right back over the top about the new OC means the offense will open up now. He didn't ask about. At first, he put a question mark. Look, as long as I've been alive, people have been wondering / complaining when Michigan is going to open up the offense more. When's Michigan going to throw the football more? And, it's been something that's always happened. And then this year, I mean, heading into the season, people were complaining about Michigan just can't run the football. Well, they won doing it. So, maybe they can't continue to do that, but it's, gnashing your teeth about, if Michigan's going to open up the offense. I mean, that's down the list a little bit, I think, to my concerns about what's going to make Michigan successful or not. And, let's just say Alex Orji wins the job. Michigan's not going to throw the ball more than they did last year.
Denny, be careful what you want, because you'll get it. Remember, Rich Rodriguez was going to come, and I liked Rich. I'm going to talk about this again in a second. Rich Rodriguez coming in, he's going to open it up. We're going to be all over the place, and we saw how that worked out. At the end of the day, the Big Ten is a running the ball conference. It's a stop the running the ball conference. And let's put one other little factor in there now. Now with the 12-team playoff system, there are going to be games. That's right, playoffs. There are going to be games in November, maybe the first week in December, outside in a Midwestern stadium. Okay? That's a running the ball condition. Okay, you're going to see teams playing late in November, in December, in wind, in rain, in snow, in all these elements, and they're going to have to go back to running the ball. So just be careful what you want. You think we're going to open it up? Hey, just be careful what you want. We've already seen it once before.
Jerry, you do know that both of those Southern California teams are looking to pass the ball, and Oregon's basketball on grass with Dan Lanning. I don't know what Washington's going to try to do, but I mean, your point about the snow and wind, they might be in for a rude awakening, right?
Could be a different climate altogether for them.
It could be. You are right. So that's it. Let's look at some of the feedback here. Now's the time. We're going to talk about the Lions here right after the feedback. So let's put some of the feedback up. And I thought that maybe Richard had so much enjoyment out of winning the national championship that he took a vacation from a month from the podcast, because he would normally be on Michigan's going to be 15-0, but he has resurfaced, and he's just making a statement that Michigan will be a national contender again in 24 and 25. And what do you think about that, Jerry?
Why would I think anything different if we continue to keep our defensive personnel and the personnel we have on offense? Why would anybody not consider us one of the top teams coming back in this in the country in football? If we sign everybody on defense, if everybody stays on defense, we're one of the best defenses in the country, if not the best. If not the best.
The reason would be that they lost Harbaugh and they have to replace 10 starters on offense. I mean, that's why you would think Michigan would have a drastic fall off. And
absolutely. But I'm saying we're not going to be rebuilding. We're going to be reloading. I think our offensive line is going to be a very good offensive line. Time will tell how good it is going to be compared to these last couple of years. But I think our offensive line is going to be very good. I think our running game is going to be good. I think our running backs are going to be good. I will say this. I think we're going to have to go more outside zone than inside zone with Edwards. That I think is going to be something we should look at. I think Edwards is more of an outside zone kind of guy. But I think our offense is going to be very good. Good enough to compete for a national title.
I would also add on there that the schedule of having to play Texas, USC, at Washington, Oregon, Ohio State. I mean, maybe they can win all 5 of those. But that's going to be tough. But you don't have to go undefeated. You can maybe even have 3 losses and get in the playoff.
That's what's making next year so exciting. Anybody can win from any position. Just get into that 12-team playoff. And hey, all bets are off.
Kevin indicating that the Raven pipeline, now with Jesse Minter leaving, it would also be a big reason that you could say that Michigan might have a transition year, and they might fall off. He also adds the loss of Herbert. That was paramount, could be hard to replace. I think those are 2 excellent points, Jerry. So
again, I agree.
You lose Harbaugh, you lose Minter, you lose Herbert. You got a murderous schedule. You got to replace 10 out of 11 on offense. So there's 5. That's why. Those are 5 reasons. No,
absolutely. But again, we have Steve Klinksdale, who worked with Minter. So he still has that pipeline to the Ravens in communication network, okay? And he's worked with them. He knows what's out there, and he knows what to do. And I'll tell you what, right now, in my opinion, I think Klinksdale did a lot more on disguising our coverages than what he was given credit for. I think Klinksdale did a phenomenal job in the disguise of our coverages. And I would say Ohio had a couple of some of his best throws were incompletions because they were going back the other way if he would have thrown them right where he needed to throw them. I'm talking about the Ohio quarterback this year against us. If he throws to Harris a couple times where he thinks should have thrown the ball. I think those are going back the other way for pick sixes. So,
Now, Jerry, I love Clinkscale myself and think he would be a fine defensive coordinator. And you can say, well, you're biased because you just like Michigan. And you might be right there. I'll have to ask you.
And Youngstown.
You're right. That's where I was going here. Jerry Cardinal Mooney from Youngstown, Ohio. Now, Clinkscale is from Youngstown, Ohio. So it's going to be tough for you, isn't it? If you didn't think he was getting, so what about that part?
Yeah, it's going to be tough for me to criticize him. Yes, it's going to be very difficult for me.
He's your guy, yeah.
He's
but
my guy. I like him. I think he's an outstanding defensive coach, and he's a big-time, upcoming young talent in college football coaching.
I got to tell you, anyone that would doubt Clinkscale, let's go and find one of his news conferences and just listen to him. He's got the kind of personality. You could see how a player would want to play for him easily. And it's not like that with every other coach. I mean, but in Clinkscale, you can see the connection there. And then he was the co-defensive coordinator last year. Who really knows how much, input he had? Certainly he had a lot on the game plan. I don't know how many, we don't know about the play calling.
We can assume this, Denny. He had more of an impact than we know because of all the attention Menor garnered, rightfully so. Menor was the name. Menor was everything as far as the defense was concerned. But we all know it wasn't just Menor. It was his staff and his personnel and the way they used it. And I believe Clinkscale was a bigger part than anybody gave him credit for on last year's defense.
Good stuff. Couple more questions. Sam wants to know if there will be a Big Ten championship game this year. How is it seeded, given that there are no more divisions? Well, you'll have to look to the tiebreakers, but right, there's no more divisions. But yes, you will have two teams that will play in the Big Ten title game. So it could be Michigan, Ohio State on November 30th next year, and then they could come right back the next weeks. And so there's only 30 days in November. They would be there on December the 6th, playing again 2 times in 2 weeks. That could happen, and how that plays out. That's how that is going to go.
From what I understood, Denny, it was the top 2 teams in the Big that would play for the championship. But right. That's what I heard. I don't know how true that is. So
I don't know how true this is either, but I'm going to have you speculate, Jerry. Okay, here we go. Moose is talking about rumors that Will Johnson, Kenneth Grant, Mason Graham, and Colston Loveland weren't happy with Herbert leaving, and they are questioning staying at Michigan. He says he thinks it's BS personally.
Let's hope so. Those are tough names to replace. Hey, listen, don't kid yourself. Herbert leaving is a huge loss. Now, this young man, Tress, coming in, I think he's worked under Herbert. I think he's seen Herbert. I think he's been influenced by Herbert. So, that would be my next go-to guy. Who was in Herbert's stable? Tress was there. Yeah. Now, with that said, I can tell you my relationship with Mike Gittleson was phenomenal, and I still have a relationship with Mike Gittleson today. And I would say this about Mike Gittleson. I don't think I've never had knee replacements or hip replacements or any of that stuff. I'm 62 years old. I've never had any of those replacements, and I credit Mike Gittleson for the way we conditioned. I mean, the way we conditioned, it was more high intensity training, less powerlifting, and my body feels pretty good right now. I'm 62 years old. I'm in pretty decent shape as far as that's concerned. I'm not walking with a cane or anything else. With that said, you've got to believe that these players had a phenomenal relationship with Herbert. They're not happy with him leaving. And that's now on Sherrone Moore to bridge that gap and get those players back on on the grounds because we can't afford to lose those types of players.
Yeah, it is the number one thing right now in Michigan football.
My biggest
The
concern.
transfer portal window is still open for 3 more weeks. These guys can jump in it at any point. And when you lose your head coach, we know how it works in recruiting. When there's a head coach is gone, even Michigan fans, oh, we could pick that carcass. Let's call those guys because these guys will be looking to go. They're all getting calls.
Yep.
In addition, Herbert, it was the consigliere for Harbaugh after Biff Poggi left. He loved him, and the players regarded him as you regard Mike Gittleson. So there's another thing that you could say, hey, well, maybe the thing. And the third thing is that tampering is a real thing. Players can be in communication with other teams. They're not supposed to be, but they're going to be getting offered money. How Michigan keeps these guys, if Will Johnson, I don't know, just take any of them. If Loveland comes in and says, I don't know, USC's offering me $1 million. I mean, like, is Michigan just going to say, bye, Felicia? I don't know what they're going to say. They're going to say, hey, well, we can get you I don't know. But that's the big piece that I'm sure that they've already discussed. So I think it's real. I don't know if any of them are going or anything else, but it's the number one thing that they have to deal with. The conversations have already been had, whatever the game plan is, however it's going about. I would think that, the whatever pool of money that that Michigan has in NIL, it gets back to NIL to begin with. It's not like Sherrone Moore can say, throw 100,000 to each one of those guys and we're good. That's not how it's supposed to work. It's supposed to be the outside entity. Now we realize that they have to back channel it, but that they need a better system where they got to back channel it, and that's against the rules, but everybody is doing it, like right in broad daylight, and only a couple of them are getting nabbed. They got to figure that part out. However,
because I don't think there's a way to police the NIL, Denny. That's the whole point. I don't think you can police it. It's an advertising deal. It's not a compensation. It's an advertising. It's me getting paid to advertise your product. That's what NIL is. Name, image, and likeness. You want my autograph? Here it is.
Let's get the Attorney General in Michigan, in the state of Michigan, to say, we want the University of Michigan players to be able to upfront get paid their money because other teams, well, they don't even have to say because other schools are doing it, because it's an antitrust thing.
Because it's an antitrust.
The ability, they should be able to discuss NIL deals with the university, and they should be able to get paid. It's against antitrust. Where's the Michigan Attorney General? Where's Michigan's president? Where's Michigan's athletic director? Where's Michigan's regents? These guys are going to be up for voting. I know a lot of people just default to where's Ward Manuel, which isn't, it's a lot easier than talking about attorney generals and antitrust and the president and the regents. You just throw it, at one person's feet.
Process.
What all of that. So, let's get the attorney general involved in Michigan.
I'm all for it. Yeah, Denny, that's where I'm at. First of all, Denny, if I'm not, I might be way off on this, but if I'm not mistaken, somebody told me last year we had 10 or 12 millionaires on our football team. And also we heard, correct me if I'm wrong, that some of our players stayed because they got more money to stay at Michigan than they did to go to the NFL. Okay? So we got the money. We have the money.
Right.
We got the money to get these guys. Now, why it's not happening, or maybe it is happening. Maybe we're not hearing it.
Well, that's the thing about complaining about NIL, is that NIL was a big reason why Michigan won the national championship last year.
Absolutely.
But no matter if Harbaugh was still here, and even if the athletic director, the regents, and the president and the attorney general, I put them in there involved, if they all signed off on everything Harbaugh needed, they still would need a new approach, because the old approach isn't working in 2024. Because they won the national championship, those same guys, the players that stay will be compensated. A lot of them left. Now that, they need to retain the players, that those that go thwart tampering will be rewarded. That doesn't have a nice ring to it. We need something better motto than that, but we'll work on that one. Smash, I think works it. Smash their bank accounts. I don't know. We'll, what do they say that? Workshop that one.
Yeah, we will do some workshop on that one. Denny.
All right, Jerry, finally. The Detroit Lions. It was it might seem like it's a month ago to you. It was a month ago that Michigan yesterday played Alabama. It was just last Sunday that the Detroit Lions lost the NFC title. Give me a thought about that game and the Lions moving forward.
Can I give you a couple thoughts, Denny? I like hearing myself talk sometimes.
You go ahead. Yeah, let's hear it.
You know, Dan Campbell reminds me, and this is going to maybe shock some people. He kind of reminds me of Chuck Noll. A little nutty. Chuck Noll, way back when he came into Pittsburgh, made a lot of decisions that were controversial. Bringing Terry Bradshaw in was controversial. Bringing what was his name? Jefferson Street Joe Gilliam in and starting an African-American quarterback was very controversial. And if you remember correctly, he went for it on fourth down because he in the Super Bowl at midfield because he was afraid of the punting game. So, you know, Dan Campbell, first of all, hands down, best coach in the NFL this year. Maybe a close second was LaFleur. But Dan Campbell, by far, is the NFL Coach of the Year, in my opinion. With that said, you take the good and the bad with Dan Campbell. Dan Campbell, maybe we're in the NFC Championship game because of all the fourth down and risky plays that he came up with. And now we're not in the Super Bowl because of maybe what Dan Campbell did as a risky play caller and head coach. So, you got to take the good and the bad. I think he's the NFL's Coach of the Year. What a great season for the Detroit Lions and the fans. And I got a feeling we're going to be in this position for the next 5-6 years. With the Lions. We're a very good young team. We have a great young coach who's learning. I think, if he were to really look back on it, all he needed was about 3 or 4 field goals, and we're in the Super Bowl in the second half. So, great job, phenomenal job, Coach of the Year, great team. And I see the Lions in this position for a few more years.
So you're patting him on the back there, but you would have kicked those field goals.
I would have been, think about it. They come down, they score a field goal. They get the ball at the second half. They come down and score a field goal. That's a great job by the defense, holding them to a field goal. Now we take the ball down and we get in position. Now there's nothing to be said that it's a guaranteed kick and we're going to make it. But it's a 47-yard field goal, and you got to believe in your kicker. And I think I'm coming into that second half thinking I need 3 or 4 field goals. I need about 9 to 12 points to win this game. And that would have I think Adam's momentum is huge, even in the pros. And yes, that was a big psyche moment. Young team, hard to handle that. Missing it on fourth down. So, again, hats off. Phenomenal year. Coach of the Year, in my opinion. And they all learned. And I think we'll be back.
Yeah, I got a question for you. I thought myself that the Lions had a very good year. I thought that they would win the North, and I thought that or the Central. I thought that they would. It is the North. They would win the North and then win a playoff game, but they won 2. So it was a very good year, but they had a very bad second half of the NFC title game.
That's what hurts.
The whole thing about kicking is it's a 50-50. I listened to both of the arguments. I wanted to kick them myself. I loved them going for it all year long, and it's a part of their identity. And they look like when they They run the ball. It looked like Michigan at times. It'd be 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9, and they run the ball because they know they're going for it. I mean, that was part of Ben Johnson. And, but it bit him. Him running the ball from the 2-yard line there late where they had to burn a timeout and they didn't get in. That was the ball game. And he's a great offensive coordinator who's coming back. But, he cost them the game with that. So it was the worst loss in Detroit sports history. And I go back to 87 with Isaiah in Game 5, throwing the ball away to Bird. But you know what? The Pistons came back and won back-to-back championships. I would think about Sheed not covering Robert Horry. The Pistons would have won back-to-back championships in 2005 if that didn't happen. That was a big game. The Red Wings have had a couple. I think about Game 7 against the Penguins in 2009. That would have been for back-to-back Cubs. The Sharks in the first round in 94. I think the Red Wings could have made a deep run there. But so none of these really compare. Big Poppy, if you're a Tigers fan, that was a big one. But for the Lions getting to the NFC Championship game, hopefully that they're back in this position and they're kind of running the same thing and they can get to the Super Bowl and it's the same system. You can say, they had to go through that growing pain like Isaiah and against the Celtics. That's not nearly as bad of a deal because the Pistons came back and won it. I hope we're not sitting here next year and in 5 years and 10 years saying, Dan Campbell not kicking those field goals. The Lions haven't sniffed the NFC Championship game since. That's how I feel about it.
Well, like I'm going back to what I said earlier, Denny. I think this is a great young team. It's built through the draft. I think they've got some murky waters that they got to go through with Goff right now and see where they're at with him and how they're going to sign him and what resources are left after they sign him. So that's a big offseason move, but I feel that this team is in a great position and it can be in a great position for a good 5-6 years.
Let's go for a Lions-Chargers Super Bowl next year. I would take that and a Michigan. Who do you want to see Michigan play in the national championship game next year, Jerry? For a back-to-back title. I'll go with Georgia.
You know what? I was right there with you, Denny. Okay. I'm going right there, because I said it when it happened. I was happier to play Alabama than I was to play Georgia. I thought Georgia was a better team than Alabama, except on that day.
I got one final question for you, and it's bugged me. And I'll ask you because you've coached for a long time. How long were you a coach in high school?
Over 20 years.
Over 20 years. All right. So the second 4th down, the first one they threw the Reynolds, he almost had it. He dropped it. The second one was a bad deal because the Lions had what Greg Olson said, the commentator, this mesh concept that was for man. And at the last second, the Niners changed up to a zone. And the Lions, instead of having somebody just 2 or 3 yards down the field for some kind of outlet, they had guys down the field, and that thing blew up immediately, all because of the great last-second decision to go to zone. I don't know if you looked at it, was that the time to call a timeout? Should they have had something else in there in case, okay, you've got all this for a zone, but what if they do go to man? You're screwed if they go to man? It reminded me a little bit like the last year against TCU on the first drive on the Philly special, where maybe McCarthy should have said, wait a second, they're in a zone. We can't go to the Philly special, but they did, and it blew up on them. What about that part for the?
First of all, correct me if I'm wrong. They were in field goal range at that point in time too, correct?
Yeah, they were in a field goal range again. Right,
and we're down 3.
Yeah,
we're down 3.
That's right.
I think
No, I think they should have kicked it too, Jerry. I think they should have kicked it both times. But like I said, I'm not killing them for it. I would have done it. Hopefully they don't rue the day. All of those kind of things. Whatever. But what about? Shouldn't you have a play? The great Ben Johnson have something in there for in case that at the last second, they go to a zone and you're not just like screwed.
Denny, when I played at Michigan, Bo used to always say there's going to be one guy unaccounted for. If they send everybody, there's going to be one guy unaccounted for. The quarterback is responsible to identify that guy who's not accounted and hit the receiver right behind him. And that's what we always tried to do. And from what I understood of our passing game, no matter what, they're going to, if they send it all out, we're going to be 1-. So that means either your back's blocking, which still leaves you 1-, or he's out in a pattern behind that blitz. And that was the problem that I had with that play, is that there was no outlet. We did not account. Yes, we see him in man, and then all of a sudden they're in zone. But we should have that play at that point in time ready to go. So in other words, what I'm saying is when we see that zone happen coming from a man disguise, I think there should have been an outlet there somewhere, a nice, easy pass for Goff. But there wasn't. I think we ran a play that was a total man concept, and we got bit in the tail for it.
Yes, they did. And the defense, it would have been nice if they would have got a stop because the 49ers scored
right away
on every possession.
Yep.
SW Lyon, talking about the bounce off the helmet. That was part of it, but they didn't stop them at all. So, and then the momentum, it's a case in momentum. He said, momentum, you just got to get out there. Forget, don't fumble on the very next play off of that. That's when Gibbs fumbled, man. It was such a turn of events. It was such a meltdown. I still can't believe it. I'm sitting here. I'm still shocked about it all.
And I'm hoping we learned our lesson, because that came right after the field goal. All of this happened after not going for the field goal. So I'm hoping we learned our lesson a little bit.
Adam says it was a post-snap change by San Francisco. Nice job.
It sure was.
Nice job there. Hey, that's they got good coaches too. Now they're in the Super Bowl.
Yep, absolutely.
So there you go. All right, Jerry, great job today. Look forward to talking with you next week. Maybe we'll be talking about a defensive coordinator then.
Denny, always a pleasure working with you, and hail to the victors.